Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. As usual, I have a long interview, but it's with one of our regular guests that I think you're going to like. Welcome aboard. In the house, we have El Señor AVQ, Michael Rudnan from Brooklyn, New York, Patrick Magner from Houston, Texas. We also have Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia, Paul Fleming from Powder Springs, Georgia, Harry Denson from Missouri City, Texas, Eric from Kingwood, Atascocita, J. Ray from Houston, Texas, Le Danube. I love that name, Le Danube. Where are you from? Let me know. E2247 from all over the place, keeping us in check. He says, USS Gerald R. Ford in Atlantic will lead carrier strike group into Caribbean toward Venezuela, Colombian waters, joining the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima. This is ridiculous. There is no reason whatsoever for Americans to have any kind of involvement inside of Venezuela or Colombia. This is, again, wagging the doll or whatever they call it. Well, what can I say? Sudden departure of Adam Halsey has caused chaos in U.S. Southern Command. You know, the U.S. Southern Command used to be hosted in the Canal Zone in Panama. Of course, they had to move when all the bases had to close. Let's see what else we got here. What else have we got here? Who else is in the house? On the other side, remember, I missed the first few people in Substack, first few dozen actually. But we have Danny's. Welcome aboard, Danny's. John A. I think you're John A. from, Minneapolis. And we have Rex Bayer. Cheryl Elkins. Buenas tardes, mi corazón, my dear, beautiful friend. Hey, everyone. G4, G5 storms in progress. You all have the opportunity to see the aurora tonight. Go outside and look north. I don't think we get it this south. I just don't think we get it this south. Cynthia Kemp, welcome aboard. Lisa Blair from Atlanta, Georgia is also in the house. Welcome aboard. According to Paul Fleming, under the big ugly bill, Alphabet gets $17.9 billion in tax breaks. That could pay for SNAP benefits for 7.5 million Americans. Amazon gets $15.7 billion. That could lower ACA premiums for 2.4 million people. Microsoft gets $12.5 billion. That could cover Medicaid for 3.8 million children. And Cheryl says it will be that far south tonight because of the strength. Just saw update for you all. You mean I can see it in Houston? If that's the case, I will be outside looking. I think I would love to see that, but we'll see. Welcome aboard. All right, folks, let's continue the show. Before I get started, I have a long interview, but before I get started, I want to play something. I played it earlier this morning, and I want to set it up right. Donald Trump once said that the reason we have employment problems in the United States is because of those damn immigrants. Get rid of those immigrants and everything will be okay. Of course, the reality is the lack of immigrants, specifically, even if they're undocumented or not, has really put our food supply in danger. And the kind of danger that has put part of our food supply is crop that's rotting. So it's not even that it cannot be distributed. It's rotting because there aren't people available to pick it because, Americans just don't do certain types of jobs. Well, he now was asked the questions about H-1B visas. I want you to see the callousness with which he answered the question. Then I want to close her up with a final statement that I want to ask MAGA. How comes your guy can't see the real picture?
Does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
We have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles.
First of all, why is the first thing that he talks about is making missiles? Wasn't this the guy that was going to be the all end to wars? But he talks about you can't bring somebody off the unemployment line and bring them to build missiles. But the most important thing is note what he said about his people. They are not talented. Now, he called countries like India and Vietnam and Nigeria S-hole countries. And guess where the engineers and the doctors and the nurses are coming from? These supposedly S-hole countries that he talks about. Now, let's take it one step further. As he demeans the American people by saying there's no talent here in the United States, as he demeans the American people by then hiring or promoting the hiring of people from the S-hole countries, somehow now he's talking down to his own. Wouldn't it have been more compassionate to answer this question as, well, you know, we need to support H-1B visas in the short term but what I will do as president of the United States is I will go into Appalachia where my people are, and I will ensure that they are trained and that they are educated and that they are taken under the wings. We are going to invest our dollars, not giving it to the wealthy people, but we are going to invest our dollars in re-educating Americans. Since he says we are not talented, Americans are not talented. So we bring in people from the S-hole countries who are talented. Oh my God, this guy makes no sense. He cannot think right. How can any of you consider this a sensible man? It boggles the mind. But again, it is clear Donald Trump looks down on MAGA. We always knew that. He said, I love stupid people. That's what he said. I didn't say it. That's what he said. Anyhow, let's get started with the long video that I have today. I think you're going to like it. Let's get busy. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto, Willies, your host. Today, we are honored to have, once again, Patrick Lovell. Patrick Lovell is a producer of The Con, where he discussed the fraudulent mortgage shenanigans that took down the economy in 2008. Lovell calls himself the producer with the $71 trillion truth that the entire system depends on and hid from everyone that still doesn't get it. He continues his quest to inform with his Clean New Deal project. Welcome again to Politics Done Right, my brother, the Clean New Deal, Patrick Lovell. How are you doing, sir?
I'm honored to be your guest. And I have to just say for your audience and everybody who sees this, I don't think there is a more hardworking activist, journalist, sharer of information and insight in a way that you do that exists anywhere. I'm humbled by your power, what you do, and I hope one day we see you as a representative or a senator from the great state of Texas.
My brother, thanks for the kudos, but politics is not in my blood at all. I mean, those days are long gone. I'm just here to do what you are doing, which I'm, like I've told you so many times, many of us have learned quite a bit from what you put out there, especially what you did with the Con. And we love what you're doing going forward with the Clean New Deal. Now, before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about the Clean New Deal. But before we touch that, I want us to go ahead and talk about these elections and how vast and wide the leftward move was in this election. What's your thoughts, first of all? Just freewheel it for me.
Well, I was, like everybody, ecstatic to see the blue wave. And I was on pins and needles watching how everything was going to shape up in New York City, obviously, with the mayoral race with Zoran Mandani. But what was interesting to me was he's in the belly of the billionaire apparatus that all of the information we're going to discuss is what I reveal. And what's so amazing is that what I was very intrigued by was here's this young guy. Obviously, his parents are very established, very thoughtful people. I would describe them, from my limited knowledge, as being a part of a long sort of tradition of intellectuals in Manhattan that, bring a lot to the table, right? I think his father was a professor of international geopolitics and that sort of thing at Columbia University. His mother's a filmmaker. And so he comes with a deep knowledge of the way the world works and the way New York world works. So even though he's a young man, it was obvious to me from the get-go that he was certainly sophisticated by the ways and means of the city of which he is a part. But what was interesting and what is so important in terms of our dialogue in context to the broader national blue wave is that he became a target, obviously, of the billionaire class. And they spent millions of dollars trying to, basically rug pull his campaign. But who did they have running against him? they had just another Machiavellian expression of a corrupt system that was just sitting there static. And so the fact that millions, I think 2 million New Yorkers came out to vote for, what we both know is social democracy, and the platform for rent control and free transportation and childcare and some of those elements in a city that is so unaffordable. What I've seen in New York City, and I'm sure the same thing in H-Town, particularly in certain neighborhoods, but San Francisco and New York probably at the top of the list in the United States, is the unaffordability crisis. You can't live in those cities unless you're a billionaire, for the most part, right? And so here comes a guy trying to deal with the population that's not that, and they tried to squeeze it. Now, what we saw in California with Prop 5, what we saw in Pennsylvania with the
justices.
The justices, I thought that was incredible. From what I understand, Mississippi almost got.
They removed it. No, what they did is they removed the supermajority, so it no longer has a supermajority in Congress,
right?
In the legislature. Yeah.
So all of that was extraordinary, and then of course, but we saw the capitulation in all things Chuck Schumer and the 8 that decided to break the government shutdown, and that we all know is going to lead to hyper, increases in healthcare costs and millions of people being thrown off of Medicaid and that sort of thing. And so, as we heard throughout this week, Democrats obviously snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, right? And, a lot of people, and I saw you particularly, and I don't want to, kind of set this up because I don't think I've really thought out as clearly, although I did see Lawrence O'Donnell speak to the subject that Chuck Schumer, and Bernie said it as well, who are we going to place Chuck Schumer with, right? But for those that are frustrated, that really to, let's say Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and Lawrence O'Donnell's comments last night that we're in the third inning. No, we're not in the third inning. Okay. And if we were using a baseball metaphor, the manager of the Democratic team has been getting its ass kicked so hard that if it was a real baseball team, we would have fired the manager a long time ago, first and foremost. But the problem is the oligarchs. It's the billionaire donors. It's the scenario that this system is still tied to. This class that I reveal in the Clean New Deal has absolute power. And what do we know from centuries of, education and learning? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And you can't have, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to interject for two things here. First of all, I agree wholeheartedly with all that you've said thus far. And all praises be on to how Mandan conducted the election. I want to change some phraseology because I think we have adapted a lot of times to billionaires' phraseology so that we work against our own interests. And this is what I mean. When we talk about free transportation and free childcare or that sort of stuff, I think, and I have to teach myself this as well, we have to stop calling it free transportation or free childcare. It's not free. We're all paying for it. We're just saying we want to do it collectively so it serves us all whenever we need it. Because if we say free, that can negativize exactly what we're talking about. No, it's not free. We all together are doing that. The second item is when we talk about the shutdown, etc. I know you probably read the piece that I wrote on the shutdown after I listened to Lawrence. I'll be honest with you. I considered myself completely on the fence. And when I say on the fence, I didn't know where to land because I wanted to hold on till kingdom come to get what we wanted to protect those 6% of the population who are receiving healthcare subsidies through the Obamacare exchange. But then after Lawrence explained a few things, and I mean, it's not that he explained it. He allowed myself, after listening to Maddow, take the position like, oh, we caved against Lawrence, he didn't say we didn't cave. He just said he was just more pragmatic. And he said, no, remember, 271 Republicans caved. It gave me a chance to centralize and think about, well, what's next? And this is where I come down, Patrick. I have wholehearted respect for everybody who's pissed off that, well, we do the shutdown now. But my next question was, you are comfortable right now. I am relatively comfortable. Others that are activists, we've settled down into this way of living. But when we come out and ask for certain things, and the ones that are putting their bodies on the line are the mothers and kids not receiving their SNAP because we want to hold out. or the air traffic control workers who have Donald Trump telling them, if you don't come to work, I'll penalize you and affect the rest of your life. As an activist with morals, I have to think, what will the end game be? Will going another 5 months or 10 months get me subsidies for that we're fighting for? And if we don't, at some point when we have to cover, would we have done more damage? Look, it's not easy to be pragmatic in these times, right? It's hard. But like I said, I think these are things that we have to consider. And that's the reason I wrote what I wrote with regards to saying, I hate it. I don't want to call it a cave, but I'm doing another piece on it this afternoon. But let's get to what you are doing, because I think what you are doing is immensely important and is going to play an important part in this entire game. The Clean New Deal. I think going forward, what we have to do, in as much as pointing out what's wrong, we have to understand what was wrong and what can be done to bring it forward. And henceforth, the Clean New Deal. Move forward, my brother.
Well, I want to just comment that people like you give me hope, okay? And I do mean this from the bottom of my heart, Egberto. I would love, even though you say politics is not part of your, moving forward, but I think the country needs you, honestly. And I'm not suggesting that you stop what you're doing. Everything you do has to happen. It's a kaleidoscope. But if millions of us got behind the Clean New Deal, one of the things that I would propose is that we find people like Egberto to run championing the Clean New Deal in the context of everything else that's important to him. But this is the bare basics, the bare essence, the core of what has to happen to meet the moment. And what I urge all of you out there listening to this, to look around your feeds, to look around the mainstream media, to look around everywhere that you're getting your information from, depending on where you are. And if you're listening to Egberto, obviously, you're in a position that we speak the same language. What you have to understand is there is not a national movement concurrent the requisite of corruption. The corruption is the story. And what I have been saying for now years and years, and all of my work has led me to understand this, is that the formula is corruption births and fuels fascism. What we're in the midst of right now is unacceptable. Now, when your back is against the wall and you have a heart and you really care deeply about your fellow citizens and people's plight, and that you empathize because maybe you came from a similar background. Like Egberto, I don't know all of your story, but I do know you came here from Panama.
Right.
And I know, and I was listening fondly recently to you overeating a lot of Panamanian food, I believe, over the weekend. But, everybody has a story. Everybody has a come from. The way I describe it is we have the four walls of our existence. And what that characterizes is it doesn't matter if you're a young person coming up and you're just discovering voting for the first time. Maybe you're in college. Maybe you're working 2 jobs. Maybe you're trying to get an engineering degree like our friend Egberto was able to achieve with his career. Maybe you're taking care of your parents. Maybe you're taking care of your family and you're trying to get to a better place. And the education's out there and you have to play and walk through the fire based on the rules that are out there, and you have to work with the system. So you might get loans, for example, to propel you into medical school, to become a better person, to provide for your family, to live the American dream. And that's what I would characterize as the American dream. Moving forward, becoming your best version of your actualized self. But in our society, we have been rotting from corruption for now decades. Donald Trump is not the causation of this corruption. Donald Trump was a piece of this corruption, and now really the ultimate expression of it. And if you're horrified, I mean horrified, by this administration's war on science, on this administration's war on the law is central to everything the United States is. We have a corrupt Supreme Court. We have a corrupt Department of Justice. We have a corrupt FBI. We have corrupt agencies that have been quashed by Donald Trump. The very first thing he did was fire inspector generals in every facet of the federal government. And then Doge set about creating chaos within the system that makes our country safe, whether it's any regulatory body, whether it's air traffic control, whether it's NOAA, National Atmospheric Sciences. My favorite agency of all, NASA has been decimated by this insanity where we have allowed, because of decades of corruption, this person who I believe cheated his way through Wharton Business School. I've seen who is debilitating every single day in front of our eyes. We know about the ankles. We know about falling asleep. We know about all of these other just intrinsic weird scenarios with what we're seeing on a daily basis from maybe we could say what was the most powerful position on the planet, I think has been completely decimated and defiled by this person who I affectionately refer to as the stain, because he literally is staining the integrity and the credibility of the office of the presidency of the United States, which we've had issues with in the past, but nothing along these levels. Donald Trump recently has said publicly that communism is 1,000 years old. He said that Venezuelan drug dealers have killed 300 million Americans. But here's the craziest thing of all. The guy has made out with north of $5 billion illegally, breaking law after law after law, and ultimately while starving 42 million Americans. At what point, Egberto, are the American people going to say enough?
They've started saying enough, and that is what they have started saying enough, Patrick, and that is a good thing that I saw out of the election, and that is a positive thing that I see for 2026. And as a lot of smart people have said, all the suppression can stop voting on the edges. But when you get a mass movement, there's no suppressing there. There's no suppressing there. Now, with regards to the Clean New Deal, why don't you tell us a little bit about what part you are going to play in informing with your project here, because I find it necessary and intriguing.
Well, to set the table, look, everybody right now is obviously looking towards 2026. And I think a lot of us, we haven't really fully ferreted it out, but are very concerned with the lack of democratic leadership. There's not a comprehensive vision to purge corruption. There's a lot of different variables where we've got to fight, like you just saw Governor Newsom in Houston, which I thought was amazing, addressing all of the things after Prop 5 and showing up in Houston and addressing Governor Abbott, I thought was quite extraordinary. And I think a lot of leaders that we've seen from Governor Pritzker, from Governor Hochul, and Governor, and of course, we've got two new Democratic
governors, yes.
Right. But a lot of these guys, and Pritzker included, right? And I like what Pritzker says, and I like what Pritzker has shown, but boy, is he dealing with some insane things that are happening there. And I think Governor Newsom would be dealing with the same stuff if there wasn't so many billionaire funders to Donald Trump's apparatus that live in Palo Alto and San Francisco that probably said, yeah, we don't need the troops in San Francisco sort of thing, right? So what is my role? I am leading and I'm going to call it what it is. It's a crusade to purge corruption. Because where I come from is I've been an investigative journalist where I had the great fortune after a disaster in 2008 to be able to piece together all of the elements of what created the 2008 great financial crisis. But ultimately what the story is what didn't happen in the aftermath. Now, recently, a lot of folks have been saying to me, because they've been discovering, and I'll get into what the details of the precepts of the Clean New Deal are, but they asked me a question of, well, wait a second, you're talking about creating a new Glass-Steagall. And again, I'm couching that to just make this point for the moment. After the great financial crisis, we had a big legal sort of juxtaposition where we created what was known as the Dodd-Frank law, right? The Dodd-Frank Act. And that was supposed to prevent everything that created the 2008 great financial crisis. It didn't. What we're dealing with now is the aftermath of why regulation has been gutted, how the laws have been circumnavigated by billionaire interest to be able to elevate corruption, because it's a giant game, okay? Finance and our institutions of Wall Street, which manifest a lot of different variables on the street and really throughout the United States, of course. But we're talking about asset managers. We're talking about too big to fail apparatuses. We're talking about hedge funds. We're talking about private equity being pretty much the 5 key points and how they operate. And what you have to understand is we have a financial system because we all understand money is everything. You want to get things done in the society. You want to create, new projects, jobs, the opportunities for people to go through their life and provide for their families. Everything is about capital. And what the 2008 great financial crisis did was it seized up what we call liquidity. It destroyed liquidity for the entire global financial system because it was all taken down by the largest criminal racketeering enterprise in the history of the world. What happened in the aftermath? We let the bad guys get away with it. The whole idea of Dodd-Frank was to pretend that the government circled the wagons to make sure this would never happen again. But I can assure you, it never ended. And what we're living with is the aftermath. And I'll be more than happy to go into all of the details. But I wanted to take that moment to set the table that the reason why everything is a mess, and just put yourself into this picture, my friends. We all know that the system is corrupt. We all know the system is rigged. But nobody has the time to discover who did what, when, and how the system works, what should have happened, and what didn't happen. And unless and until you have that blueprint, you cannot understand the system that controls us all at this moment.
Now, as I understand as well, because I think this is important, there's a lot that you said there that went over the heads of a lot of people, from liquidity to systems freezing up. We know what happened back then. But people know there's something that is wrong. People know something is wrong. They just don't know what. Not only don't they know what, but I don't know that they want to get into the nitty gritty. I mean, there are some of us, you and I and others, who are trying to inform that needs to get into the nitty gritty of what went on. But we have to earn the trust of these people that after we found out, like you've done, all these issues, that they say, okay, we need to have a change, and the change needs to look like this. So what I'm hoping for with a lot of work that folks like you are doing is that you go out there and fight that battle and find all that corruption that in fact you have already found, and then put it, not necessarily put it into, a third grade level, but actually have levels of gradation, right? If people need very technical information, it is there. And I know you have that. If the people need moderate information just so that they can make a decision, or lastly, if the people come and they say, I trust you, what is it? And what am I supposed to do? And,
perfect.
You see what I'm saying? So
absolutely.
I think those three levels are very, very important for us to win this battle. And I'm hoping that as you build out the Clean New Deal, that is the way you are going to present the information. And you can tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me tell you how I juxtapose this whole thing, right? So I'm a systems guy like you, right? I have to understand how things work to understand, like if something's not working, I have to ask questions to find out what's not working so I can learn how to fix it, right? That's basically just what we have to do throughout life and everything we actually do, whether or not in our jobs or in our family lives and so forth. So I look around and I ask myself, okay, what is the paradigm of the United States that everybody can understand, or at least what we're taught to believe? We're taught to believe that everybody has fairness, that everybody has the freedom of movement, the liberty to make our own choices. And those choices are ultimately backstopped with the freedom to not only move in whatever direction we need to based on what our life influences and confluence and so on and so forth. But it's also that we have the ability to hold power to account by voting. One person, one vote. That's the notion of democracy. We vote for people who represent our interests because as we move forward in life, we certainly would prefer somebody listening to what our plight is and then building a system through which the system is fair to us so that we can, live the best life that we possibly can, right? That's really the notion that I grew up with. Over the course of the last, let's call it 30 years, we've seen been really 50 years, but we've seen some really catastrophic things that have taken shape that I describe as the 4 questions. And it's like a Rubik's Cube. Once you put these pieces together, then you have the capacity to move into what I call the precepts of the Clean New Deal. So let me tell you how this whole thing works. First, you have to ask the question, what is qualified immunity? Egberto, what is qualified immunity?
Qualified immunity is what police officers get simply from working for the government, etc.
So they can shoot people.
They can shoot people.
And the way the insurance works within the city is that the city might settle with the family, but they won't be held criminally accountable.
They would not, personally, they will not be held criminally liable.
Now, that creates a whole juggernaut of problems, does it not?
Yeah.
If an African-American male, youth.
Absolutely, because, your prejudices can come out on me and you will never have to pay for that, or you'll never have to be judged for that.
So that means the law is not equal. That means that the police are above the law, which is
absolutely
ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying, just so people understand, I'm not saying that that the police shouldn't be able to shoot to kill. Like, for example, during an insurrection on Capitol Hill, the fact that there's a mad mob bringing guns and everything else, I would think that would be a pretty appropriate time for the police to be able to shoot back, quite frankly. Just my mentality. But at the same time, if you plant drugs on somebody and you catch them running away and you shoot them in the back, I don't think that's something that you should be above the law. So that's the first question. What is qualified immunity? The second question is, what is judicial immunity? Judges above the law. Now, there's some pragmatic things that people can argue with when you really get into technocratic situations about appeals court and Third Circuit and so forth and the federal stuff, because that's what's holding the line right now. But if we look at the Supreme Court, for example, and we know that the Supreme Court has been getting backdoored billions of dollars through all of these different think tanks, through very conservative groups like Leonard Leo and Opus Dei, and really, really scary stuff to influence all sorts of decisions, particularly as it related to Dobbs, obviously, that reverted Roe v. Wade, and other things that have come down the pike. Obviously, we saw, equality, marriage equality yesterday and so forth. But what we've seen over and over and over the course of the last 3 years, thanks to the tremendous work by ProPublica initially, which is a fantastic investigative journalism platform that I encourage everybody to check out. But they discovered all sorts of pay-to-play schemes within a literal backdoor to the Supreme Court of the United States, in which the Roberts Court, the conservative justices, have time and time again made decisions that are completely contrary to the entire history of the United States, not to mention all things progressive movements. So the question is, what's judicial immunity and why is there judicial immunity, particularly at the Supreme Court? And I'll go into that a little bit because Sheldon Whitehouse has talked about ethics being more, shall we say, firm, but I'd like to take that a step further. The third question is, what is presidential immunity? Now, it's a little bit rhetorical. We've just had the No Kings rallies, 7 million plus people with signs and every manner of disposition of Americans coming to the streets saying no kings. Because why? Because we're the United States of America. Our entire purpose is to not have a king because of all our history and Bill of Rights and the Constitution. But that's just the basic primer in a Schoolhouse Rock kind of way. And the Supreme Court, the corrupt Supreme Court, made a corrupt president above the law. So is that something that we should all be okay with? I think we should have all been en masse when they made the decision last year, approximately at this time, when they etch-a-sketched the Civil War, when they got rid of the 14th Amendment, Section 3, to say that somebody running for office who's been a part of an insurrection can't run for office, and they quashed that, and we all just were like, well, what? Let's just wait for Senator Harris to win the presidency. It's like, okay, we figured out that didn't work, right? And that's tied to Merrick Garland and some other things. But then the final piece of the 4 questions is, what is the Electoral College? Now, those are questions that we resolve in the precepts of the Clean New Deal, which I'll go into next. But I wonder if you have any questions.
No. Please go for it because we're running a little bit on time.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can. But if there's any questions that you have, please find me and I'll provide my information later. And obviously, I can.
Right in the middle, though, let's while for those that are captured right now, how do they get to this your information?
You can discover me on my YouTube page at Patrick Lovell Truth Bombs the Con. You can also, private message me there. We've also created a website called The Clean New Deal, which you can discover at www.thecleannewdeal.org. And you can see my personal and Substack as well, of course. And I'm Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con there. And I'm pretty much all over social media. So very easy to get a hold of.
Right. And I'll have your information when this is processed as well.
Perfect.
Okay, so go ahead.
So when I say that we have created the only cohesive platform to create a national movement to purge corruption on a national level, this is what I mean by that. And I'm not running for office. What I'm doing is I'm trying to get everybody on the same page so we can find candidates to run on these precepts. First and foremost, as Egberto introduced me, I'm the producer with the $71 trillion truth. So we see guys like Elon Musk, we see guys like Larry Ellison, they're worth $400 billion. You pretty much know that anybody who's in their aura tends to be like their God. They are king, right? When you're around that kind of money, it's like most people are like, well, how do I get a piece of that? And they'll do whatever it takes to get a piece of that. And that can backfire if you play the ball of like Weinstein or P. Diddy, for a dark analogy. The freak off comes with it. But the bottom line is I'm using that as a characterization because you could put 100 of the top families on the planet together with their collective net worth, and it wouldn't be 10% of the truth that I have. Okay. How did I get this truth? Years and years of investigation, of work in the con that Egberto prefaced that took us millions of dollars, to where we went inside all of the institutions. We got the whistleblowers. We discovered the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history that never ended. And I put $71 trillion on that because that's not hyperbole. That is physical, actual money that we provided illegally to the financial system following the great financial crisis that never ended. It went through 3 administrations, and I suspect we're on the verge of another one based on what appears to be another massive economic meltdown that's about to happen. So first and foremost, everything is about money, is it not? So you have to understand that after the Great Depression, we had a lot of lessons that took place. There was a gentleman by the name of Ferdinand Pecora who put together the government's investigation into what created the Great Depression. And as a result, they had hearings that were public that laid out all sorts of revelations to an American populace, of which 20% was unemployed, living in Hoovervilles and basically listening onto their radios while they were in breadlines, which almost created a riot. Honestly, there were people that went to Congress to riot with the pitchforks. That's where we get this sort of analogy. And what they discovered at that time period was all of the ins and outs of what created the crimes and they were crimes that led to the Great Depression. And as a result, they just put common sense together and figured out what's the best way to create a financial system so that it works for the people. Because the idea in capitalism, and I don't want to go into the whole socialism, capitalism, and everything else at the moment, because I got to stay hyper-focused on point one, is that if you want a system to work in finance, you have to have aligned interests and you have to have a law. Otherwise, you're going to have crime. And ultimately, what they did after the Great Depression was they created the Glass-Steagall Act. The Glass-Steagall Act separated commercial banking from investment banking because you have to have people have a place to put their paychecks so they can manage their expenditures each and every month. But at the same time, you have to have investment banks that are able to do things that are big to create new companies, great outlays, great solutions to market-based economies and all that sort of thing. But the bottom line is, if you mix them, what ultimately happens is you get the guys that are in investment banking taking risks with other people's money, literally stealing their money on fractional reserve type of scenarios, gets more technical, but gambling. And gambling based on ratio debt leverage and all sorts of other things. And when they did that in the Great Depression, they created a wipeout of the global economy, which would ultimately lead to World War II. So the way they fixed it was they separated commercial banking from investment banking. And then they created the Securities and Exchange Commission, which became the cops on the beat to prevent any sorts of criminality from taking place in the situation. And then they created the Securities and Exchange Act, which created the enforcement mechanisms to be able to police the financial system. Now, what we did was we got rid of all of that in the Clinton administration, where we deregulated everything, which led to decriminalization, which then led to this massive Ponzi scheme of finance, which ultimately created racketeering, which is crime on a global level, to destroy the global economy. But this is what we did in the aftermath. We provided them tens of trillions of dollars illegally, and this is the way the system reads in the statutes. You cannot use the full faith and credit of the United States, the exigent lending capacity of fiat currency and things that have happened since then, to be able to provide liquidity to criminals. You're not supposed to provide exigent lending to speculation in commodities and real estate. That's what's in the statutes. That's what they learned. We never changed that, and nobody would ever think to change that because it's common sense. But in the aftermath of the great financial crisis, what we did was we provided tens of trillions of dollars illegally to the system of criminal bosses, which are our financial system. We could talk about JP Morgan Chase, and we could talk about Jamie Dimon, and we could talk about Epstein and all of those things. But that's a small piece of what I'm talking about. And so what the new Glass-Steagall Act is going to have to do is basically separate commercial banking and investment banking, but with the caveat, and this is ridiculous to say this, but it has to be clear to everyone in the world that you cannot use the full faith and credit of the United States to create socialism for billionaire criminals. That's the key consideration. So what's the flip side of that, Egberto? The flip side about that is what Bernie Sanders, our brother Bernie Sanders, says all the time, right? We got to end Citizens United. What is dark money? What happens? This is the flip side of that. You buy politicians. The third precept of the Clean New Deal is, how are we going to pay for it is the question everybody asks for. We've got the debt. We've got this. We've got the other. Everybody is squeezing everybody, right? The bottom line is we're a sovereign currency. We're a fiat currency. We can produce whatever we want to. Congress, our other purse. We could create works projects. We could recreate the entire paradigm of the United States if you have the political will to do it. But unfortunately, the American people aren't using their citizenship to lean on politicians to say, we're going to get rid of the corrupt actors and we're going to have a plan to be able to reconstitute our Department of Education, NASA, NOAA, ATC, all of the elements that this country depends on, not to mention the most important one of all, the paradigmatic change from fossil fuel to renewable energy. Right now, Donald Trump is waging war on renewable energy. A month ago, he was sat in the United Nations, and after the whole Escalade Gate, or whatever we were calling it, he literally said the enemy is renewable energy. Why? Because he's getting pocketed from UAE, Saudi, this, that, and the other, because he wants to go back 50 years and everything, including energy, and erase wind energy. He got rid of the subsidies based on what the Biden administration had already approved. He got rid of $600 billion. So what I'm telling the American people, where are we going to find the money? We spent $71 trillion on Wall Street, which is about 300,000 people as far as my numbers go, but with an excess of a tiny group of billionaires. Why are these people so excessively rich? Why is the disparity of wealth so enormous that we're back to the Gilded Age? We may be as well living in the time of pharaohs because of everything I'm telling you. So we have to be able to create a new Glass-Steagall, get rid of Citizens United, demonstrate to the American people that we've spent, this isn't hyperbole, this is facts. I've got this all backed up. $71 trillion. And nobody's telling you this in mainstream media because they've all capitulated, just like the tall building law firms, just like all mainstream media. They don't talk about this. They talk about all of the periphery. So what do we get into next? The four questions that I said. We got to get rid of qualified immunity. We got to get rid of judicial immunity. We got to get rid of presidential immunity and all of the perversion of power through my goodness, I'm having a jam up here, the Electoral College, which, by the way, Donald Trump was trying to use fabrication of electoral certifications to steal the Electoral College in 2020. That's another part of this. It's the perversion of the minority rule of the majority. So that takes us through the 7 initial precepts. The final 3 are very simple, and I think we can all agree to. In my opinion, you have to get rid of insider trading in Congress. You cannot allow people to forerun trades based on government expenditures to make themselves obscenely rich, because if they're working for themselves in that capacity, they're not working for us. And as a result of that, absolute corruption corrupts absolutely. And it's on both sides of the aisle. We have to just say, forget that. And then the final 2 precepts, and I think these are absolutely critical. We got to get in the trenches. We got to fight dirty like Mitch McConnell did. We got to force the issue. We got to get 13 Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court to basically make the Roberts court gone. We've got to reboot the American dream. And then the final piece of it, and this one I think is up for debate slightly, but at the same time, I think that we should really address this in a major way. The final point that I want to make is we've got to have term limits, in my opinion. Okay, I wrote that into the Clean New Deal because when I saw Mitch McConnell on the floor of the House, lockjawed, like what's his name from my cold dead hands. When these guys get to the point where they're practically dead to basically sign for the powers that be that paid them to get there, that's not dynamism. That's not democracy. That's not fresh blood. What that is tyranny. And so what I say in closing, my friends, is you don't live in a democracy. We don't have a capitalist system. We live in a corporate fascist state that uses the full faith and credit of the United States to guarantee the mafiocracy that is now fueling fascism. And so from me to you and everyone you see. My friends, if you, me, and everyone you see who isn't a Nazi, who believes in integrity, decency, dignity, morality, beauty, sustainability, integrity, when we merge in unity behind the Clean New Deal, it will be our destiny to purge the misery of tyranny and unleash the renaissance of possibility. Thank you for listening.
I think that ends it well. Why don't you give us once again the address of your website and also how people can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. You can find me at or the website, most importantly, with all the details. And trust me, if you're a journalist, there's a lot of details in there that back up everything I said, thecleannewdeal.org. And again, I'm all over social media. You can find me, Patrick Lovell. Just Google search me. I'm primarily on Blue Sky and Substack, but you can always get in touch with me through Egberto. Egberto, thank you for the platform. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you.
My brother, that we've been speaking to Patrick Lovell, who is a producer of The Con, where he discussed the fraudulent mortgage shenanigans. And now with the Clean New Deal, he's laying out a path of what we should know as we change the country back to what it is supposed to be. Patrick, it's been my honor to have you on the program once again.
My honor. Thank you.
Patrick is very, very good. He has this subject down. I forgot the word that you used, but he has this subject done. In fact, when I'm done with the blog today, I'll include his link to his movie, The Con. He was a producer of a movie called it's a documentary called The Con that I think everybody should watch. More importantly, let's see, Margaret says, is it Margaret? Kathy says, this guy's so good. Can't believe I have not heard much of this, and I listen to tons of substackers. Let me tell you this. You will not imagine how progressives are throttled, not only by the ones that you think will throttle them. And I'm talking about systems, big systems that have some AI in there, etc. If you take a look at our count right now, our counts, you will see that, wait a minute, how comes XYZ adjacent to you has 4 times the lives that you do? Is it that you're bad or is it that you're throttled? Well, most of the times in the case of, let's say, Patrick, myself, we get throttled a lot. In other words, we have to work to push our content through the internet. And that's why direct access subscriptions to where we have an email that we can say we're coming out here now, or we can send our newsletter here. It's amazing. When I send out a newsletter, the response that I get several tens of thousands of people, every single newsletter get read. But when you do these live shows, you don't see that throughput. So it's on us, those of us that are watching lives, it's on us to, if you think we're doing a good job, to not only like and click up and share and throw it in your Twitter and all these other things. That forces the algorithm, but it also makes a direct contact with others to bring them into the program. That is the kind of stuff we need. That is the kind of stuff they don't know that you could know. Anyway, I'll take calls now before I go to the next subject. 281-823-7747. A call in number, if anybody want to discuss a little bit about that first. 281-823-7747 is the number. Let me go ahead and type that into the both sides. Anyway, that's the number to call in if anybody wants to call in before I get. The other subject is just going to take me a few minutes to talk about. Anybody wants to call 281-823-7747. I'll wait a minute before I start the other subject. But yeah, Patrick and I will have several more of these discussions upcoming for sure. So if you missed this, first of all, you can go into the archives and you can see that we've interviewed him several times. And each one of the interviews is definitely worth a listen to. Harry, how can I help you, my brother?
Well, I'm glad you have Patrick Lovell on. He covers everything very well. Get big money out of politics is getting rid of Citizens United. Let's get the green energy economy up and going and not just have the fossil fuel economy destroy the planet. And then what he said about SNAP The comments I made this morning, I just looked at my SNAP benefits, and because I have a disability, and I read all the. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because I have a physical disability. Right. Because I have a physical disability, I can't walk right now. I was able to get my SNAP benefits. But when I looked at it for November, it's they gave me $193, which means they left out $105 because I get $298 monthly. Now, I looked on the website of Your Texas Bank, and it said that you will get your full $298. But then the other comment I was going to make this morning, but you had to, you had other callers, so I didn't have time to go into that, was the fact that Donald Trump was on Laura Ingraham. And he gets up here and says that people quit their jobs and they use SNAP so that they can get like a ride. And that is a total lie. It's kind of like, when you calls you and she talks about livable wage and other people talk about, if you would pay people a livable wage, then their rent, their mortgage, and if they still need food stamps and SNAP, then so be it. But it's because it's a livable wage. And Donald Trump is up there telling lies. And then as far as the shutdown, the other comment I was going to make about the shutdown, you said that you don't think there'll be another shutdown. But if we get to January 30th and these Republicans refuse when they open up the government and they fund the government, they refuse to give the Democrats what they want, fund the Affordable Care Act, get the single payer, roll back the Medicaid cuts. Then when January 30th arrives, now the Democrats are asking for that again, and then the government is shut down because, as Arnie Arnson says, you can put the Republican answers on the back of a bumper, of a car bumper.
Again, here's the deal. Here's the deal. None of us really know if a shutdown will occur in January. My gut feeling tells me that the Democrats will just sign another CR. There's no I honestly don't think any shutdown is coming in January, but I got to go to Ray, my brother. But
I have to agree with. I probably agree with you on that because of the economy, and they don't want the economy to suffer. The Republicans have to have Harry, so that's why you're thinking.
Okay, Harry, I got it.
Talk to you later, but have a good day.
All right, let's go ahead. Come on in, Ray.
Yeah. Always enjoy hearing Brother Harry. He's always
as our passionate brother Harry.
That's right, Brother Ray.
Brother Harry. Yes.
Go ahead, Ray.
I was thinking about what you said the other day when it came to everybody, tearing down Democrats who caved, and I also watched that segment by Lawrence O'Donnell, who kind of brought another perspective to say, well, technically the Republicans caved because they didn't really have a position to even want to come to an agreement to say they would do anything at all. So I heard what you said, where it's like, okay, you got the king saying whoever this baby belongs to. Remember the story you told with the baby and the
King Solomon.
One of them had a dead baby. Yeah, yes. King Solomon and the dead baby, and the woman who actually had rightful claim to the baby said, you know what, I'd rather just give the baby away than to have it cut in half. And I really resonated with that particular thing, because there was real pain happening on the back end with all of these workers who were getting no pay and still coming to work. So I could understand the conflict there. And I could understand how unfair it was for those people who really didn't have a stake in the matter other than to keep on doing what they do. Thank God for them. But, it was at some point we knew that the Republicans were not going to give us any deal that actually would.
Can I interrupt you a second? Let me interrupt you a quick second. Let me interrupt you a second, because you just said, but we all knew Republicans weren't going to give. In effect, you're saying we all knew Republicans weren't going to be humane. I don't think the MAGA on welfare, I don't think the MAGA who's losing their health care, I don't think all the MAGAs that were affected knew that their Führer would do anything to harm them. They'd make up all kinds of excuses, my brother, to find a way to say, no, Donald Trump cares about us. One of the reasons I don't know if you came in at the start of the program. One of the reasons I started the program with the H-1B visas is to show how little concern Donald Trump has about his own supporters. Now, my goal and our goal is to say, I see the shutdown as a success. it allowed MAGA to understand for 40 days, Donald Trump said, you guys go starve. When a state tried to help and fill the blanks for a while, Donald Trump said, you can't do that. When grocery stores started to attempt to give these people discounts in food, Donald Trump said no. It is a job of progressives now, after the shutdown is over, to remind all of Americans with videos, with audio, with letters, with everything, what Donald Trump did at each step. I think, and again, that is what, like I said, I want to see the pain, but we can't continuously ask other people, and this is what gets me with the high and mighty progressives. I'm going to do a piece on this later on this afternoon. The high and mighty progressives on MSNBC. Tina Brown said, no, I don't think it's a loss. Tina Brown is sitting there with her $1 million salary while all these poor people are out there not getting their snaps because of Trump's evil, while the air traffic controllers are working tirelessly to try to not let airlines crash. And she can sit down on her high horse and say, no, we need to hold the line. It's not her who's holding the line. It's those air traffic controllers who are holding the line. It's the mother and snap that is holding the line. And that is what, right. The same kind of inhumanity that can happen on the MAGA side, some progressives can show that same inhumanity as well. Because it is inhumane as well for Tina Brown not to have seen what the person who argued before her had to say. And I had to open my eyes as well and say, hey, we got to be careful here. When we just say hold the line, there are people suffering for holding the line, and that person isn't me. That person isn't you, my brother. We have to be able to hold the line together. Continue, brother.
Yeah, and I mean, basically, that's what I was thinking. Republicans are ruthless, right, and bloodthirsty. They have really no limit to how much suffering their own people will go through to prove that they're on the side that basically is going to win.
Right.
They
Hey,
you're
right.
Not above.
You're right, brother, but I got to go. I just realized I got too into this. It's 4:01, so I got to take off. But look, I want to thank you for calling in, my brother. Thank you so kindly. And for all of you, all the links are at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Please consider becoming paid subscribers, again, by going to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter and becoming a paid subscriber of our newsletter. That is how we can continue to get this message out. I want to thank Patrick Lovell for his good information that he provided for us today. I want to thank all of you for your eyeballs, for your ears. I want to ask you all to please remember to share all that you've gotten here, and please consider become paid subscribers of Politics Done Right. Cannot do it without you. Love you all. My name is Egberto. Willies, this is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete misunderstanding of our economic and healthcare systems, are a direct result of a derelict mainstream media that too often bend over backwards to support corporate or bought politicians' wants as opposed to the people's needs for real information to make their lives better. Independent media is the only solution to inform truthfully and factually. Why? Because our loyalties are to you, the ones who fund us with small dollar contributions and subscriptions. Please consider supporting our independent media platforms by subscribing to our Egberto Off the Record newsletter at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. It's an investment that pays incalculable dividends.